The wake-up call, how I realized my mornings were aging me. I used to think aging just happened to you, like the seasons or the wrinkles on your knuckles that you can't remember appearing. I didn't question much about my daily routines, especially my mornings. I thought I was doing everything right. Getting out of bed at a decent time, grabbing a quick breakfast, skimming the news on my phone, and getting on with my day. But something started to feel off. Not suddenly, but subtly. Slowly, like a quiet leak in a tire. You don't notice until the ride becomes bumpy. I remember one morning, standing in front of the bathroom mirror. The person looking back at me wasn't sick or frail, but he didn't look vibrant. My eyes were dull. My face looked puffy. My energy, even after a full night's sleep, was dragging behind me like a stubborn shadow. My joints ached in ways they hadn't before. My memory was foggy before 10 a.m. And the worst part? I just thought this was normal. That's aging, I'd tell myself, just part of the deal. But the truth was, it wasn't aging, at least not the kind that had to happen this way. I came across a study one evening, by accident really, about how our first waking hours set the tone for our entire system: metabolism, brain function, mood, even skin elasticity. The article said that many people are unknowingly speeding up their aging process because of just a few bad morning habits. I was stunned. Could it be that the way I started my day, rushed, unintentional, unaware, was making me look and feel older than I actually was? That night I sat with a notebook and wrote down every single thing I did each morning from the moment I opened my eyes. I started seeing patterns. I wasn't drinking water until mid-morning. I skipped stretching because I didn't have time. I grabbed toast with jam or a sugary granola bar for breakfast. Worst of all, I went from sleep straight into stress, checking my phone, replying to emails, absorbing news headlines, all before I'd even looked out the window. I realized I was going from 0 to 100 emotionally without ever giving my body and mind a chance to truly wake up. The next few mornings, I did something different. I didn't overhaul everything at once. I just observed how I felt, and it was astonishing. The mornings I drank water first, my face looked less puffy. The days I stretched or simply stood outside for 5 minutes before coffee, my back didn't ache by lunch. The days I didn't check my phone immediately, my mind felt less cluttered, more focused. The wake-up call was clear. My aging wasn't just happening. It was being accelerated by my habits. I felt a mixture of relief and regret. Relief that it wasn't just me, that I could do something about it. And regret for all the years I'd been unknowingly doing the opposite of what my body needed. But I reminded myself that regret is useless unless it's followed by action. So I made a promise that week. I would fix my mornings. Not for some overnight miracle, but because I finally understood that how we begin our day is how we age our life. And that's where this journey began. I didn't change everything overnight. I started by shifting just one habit a week. And over time, I built a morning routine that now makes me feel alive, clear-headed, and even younger. Yes, younger. Not in the way I looked at 30, but in the way I felt at 30. Energized, creative, grounded, and present. In the next parts of this story, I'll share with you the 5 biggest mistakes I made every morning and how changing them helped me regain my mental clarity, improve my skin and digestion, reduce stress, and slow down the visible and invisible signs of aging. So if you're someone who wakes up tired, drained, or already overwhelmed before you've even made your bed, I want to say this: you are not alone. And you are not too late. Our mornings are sacred, but they can also be silent saboteurs. Once you see the truth of your habits, you can't unsee it, and that's when real change begins. The silent killer, skipping hydration. If I had to pinpoint the single most underestimated mistake I made every morning for decades, it would be this: not drinking water first thing in the morning. Now, I know that sounds simple, almost laughably obvious. We all know hydration is important. We've heard the 8 glasses a day rule since we were kids. But what I didn't fully grasp until I hit my 60s was how crucial that very first glass of water is to my body's aging process. Let me take you back to my old morning routine. I used to wake up, shuffle to the bathroom, maybe splash some water on my face, and then, like clockwork, I'd go straight to coffee. It was my reward for waking up, my ritual, my comfort. But what I didn't realize was that I was feeding a thirsty body with a dehydrating stimulant. You see, during the night, while we sleep, our bodies lose water. Through breathing, sweating, and metabolic processes, we wake up naturally dehydrated. And what I was doing by skipping water and heading straight for caffeine was compounding that problem. I noticed it in subtle ways. My joints felt stiffer. My skin looked drier. I felt mentally foggy for the first couple of hours after waking. I chalked it up to aging. But when I finally started researching what was really happening, I was shocked. Studies show that even mild dehydration, as little as 1 to 2% loss of body weight in water, can significantly affect mood, memory, and brain performance. In seniors, that effect is even more pronounced. Our ability to sense thirst diminishes as we age, which makes us even more vulnerable to chronic dehydration without even realizing it. One particular morning, I decided to try something different. Before my beloved cup of coffee, I drank a full glass of room temperature water with a slice of lemon. Nothing fancy, no vitamins, no supplements, just water. And you know what? I felt better. Not dramatically, not like lightning had struck, but noticeably. My head felt clearer. My digestion kicked in faster. And oddly enough, I didn't crave coffee quite as desperately. From that day on, I made it a rule. Water first. Always. Within a week, the results were hard to ignore. My skin, usually dull and slightly flaky in the morning, started to look smoother. My hands and lips, which always felt dry during cold months, were less chapped. And more importantly, I felt a subtle but powerful shift in energy and clarity within the first 30 minutes of waking. It was like I had been starting every morning with the parking brake on, and I finally released it. Later, I learned that hydration in the morning does more than just wake up your body. It actually stimulates the lymphatic system, flushes out toxins, jump-starts metabolism, and replenishes brain tissue. In fact, the brain is around 75% water, and when it's underhydrated, it's like running your computer with only half the RAM. Things slow down, errors increase, focus diminishes. One day, I was speaking to my friend, a retired nurse, and she told me something I'll never forget. She said, "Dehydration is one of the top reasons elderly patients come into the hospital. They don't feel thirsty, but they're already in trouble by the time they notice." That scared me. Not because I feared the hospital, but because I realized how preventable it was. So I started keeping a glass bottle by my bedside. I made it part of my wake-up ritual. Before I checked my phone, before I opened the blinds, before I even said, "Good morning" to my wife, I drank my water and I didn't stop there. I began adding a pinch of sea salt some mornings or a slice of cucumber or mint for variety. Occasionally, I added chia seeds and let them sit overnight. An old trick I learned from a nutritionist friend to boost fiber and hydration at the same time. Every time I sipped that water, I reminded myself, this is fuel. This is life. This is youth. We often look for complicated answers when simple ones are right in front of us. There are thousands of anti-aging creams, supplements, and routines out there. But if your cells are thirsty, nothing else matters. You can't think clearly, move easily, or look your best if you're running dry on the inside. So now, when people ask me how I managed to look and feel more energetic in my 70s than I did in my late 50s, I don't talk about fancy routines or supplements. I talk about water. And not just how much water, but when you drink it. Because I've learned something powerful. The way you begin your morning is the way your cells begin their day. And if you don't nourish them from the very first moment, you're already starting behind. Don't let that glass of water be an afterthought. Let it be your first act of love toward yourself, every single day. The breakfast trap. What I thought was healthy was hurting me. When I look back at my eating habits in my 50s and even early 60s, I can't help but shake my head. Every morning, without fail, I'd start my day with what I believed was the perfect breakfast. A big bowl of whole grain cereal, a banana sliced on top, a cup of skim milk, and maybe a piece of toast with low-fat margarine. That was my idea of healthy. I truly believed I was doing everything right. I was following the advice we were fed for decades. Low-fat this, whole grain that, quick and convenient. I was doing what the boxes and labels promised would be good for my heart and waistline. But in reality, that routine was slowly working against me. What I didn't realize is that the so-called healthy breakfast I was relying on was flooding my body with sugar, and not just from the banana. Let me explain. Even though my cereal claimed to be heart-healthy and loaded with fiber, it was also full of hidden sugars and processed grains that broke down in my body almost instantly. That meant a rapid blood sugar spike, followed by a crash. I'd feel a jolt of energy after eating, but by mid-morning I was already hungry again, sometimes irritable and reaching for a snack. The banana, while a natural fruit, added even more sugar to the mix. And the toast? That was just more quick-digesting carbs disguised as whole grains. The result? I was in a daily cycle of spiking and crashing, taxing my insulin levels and stressing my body in a way I didn't understand at the time. And for someone over 60, this is dangerous territory. Why? Because unstable blood sugar leads to a chain reaction inside the body. It increases inflammation, accelerates cellular aging, and contributes to brain fog, fatigue, and yes, wrinkles. It took me years to connect the dots. The wake-up call came during a routine checkup. My doctor looked at my blood work and said, "You're borderline pre-diabetic." I was shocked. I wasn't overweight. I walked every day. I avoided junk food. How could this be? That moment forced me to reevaluate everything, starting with my breakfast. I started researching. I spoke with a nutritionist. I read books. I learned that what I needed in the morning wasn't just low fat or low calorie, but something that would stabilize my blood sugar, support my hormones, and nourish my aging brain and muscles. So I made some bold changes. I swapped the cereal and toast for protein-rich breakfasts. Instead of skim milk, I used unsweetened almond milk or full-fat Greek yogurt. I traded in the banana for berries, lower in sugar and higher in antioxidants. I added eggs, avocados, and chia seeds to my routine, and I started making green smoothies with spinach, nut butter, and a scoop of protein powder. At first, it felt strange. I missed the comfort of my old routine. But the results? They were worth every adjustment. Within just a few weeks, I noticed I was no longer starving by 10 a.m. I had more energy, and my brain felt noticeably clearer. The afternoon crashes I'd grown used to? Gone. And best of all, my doctor's next blood test? Back to normal. But beyond the numbers, there was something deeper happening. I felt like I had more control over my body again. That sense of helplessness that creeps in as you age, that feeling like things are slipping, started to fade. I realized I had been unknowingly sabotaging myself every morning with a healthy breakfast that was anything but. It's incredible how small changes can make a big impact. One tip that made the transition easier for me was meal prepping. On Sundays, I'd hard-boil some eggs, portion out nuts, and make batches of overnight oats with chia seeds and almond milk. That way, I could still have something quick and easy in the morning, but now it was something truly nourishing. And no, I didn't give up all carbs, but I chose them wisely. Oats, quinoa, sweet potatoes, complex, slow-digesting options that wouldn't send my insulin into chaos. I also learned the power of healthy fats. They kept me fuller longer and supported my brain function in ways I hadn't felt since I was much younger. The truth is, aging gracefully isn't about restriction or deprivation. It's about making smarter choices, ones that work with your body instead of against it. If I could go back and whisper something to my 50-year-old self, I'd say, don't believe the box. Turn it around. Read the ingredients. Know what you're putting into your body. I'd remind myself that just because something is labeled heart healthy doesn't mean it actually is. I'd say, protein is your friend. Sugar is not. Now, when I eat breakfast, I feel empowered. I feel like I'm giving my body a fighting chance to be its best, even in my 70s. I feel full, energized, and mentally sharp, ready to take on the day. If you're over 60 and still starting your day with cereal and toast, I urge you, just try switching things up for a week. Add protein, cut the sugar, see how you feel. Because for me, it wasn't just about breakfast. It was about breaking free from habits that were quietly aging me from the inside out. Movement first, why morning activity transformed. My health. I used to think mornings were for sitting quietly with a cup of tea and a newspaper. Don't get me wrong, I still love the calm and stillness of early hours, but back then, I avoided movement like it was a chore. I'll walk in the afternoon, I'd say, or I'm retired now, I've earned the right to take it easy. But taking it easy had a cost. After I turned 65, I began to notice something strange. My joints were stiffer than usual in the morning. My energy didn't kick in until noon, and even then, it didn't last long. I'd sometimes feel a little foggy, like my brain was wrapped in cotton. I chalked it up to just getting older. But deep down, I knew something was off. One morning, while flipping through a wellness magazine at my local cafe, I stumbled across an article titled, Movement Before Coffee, The Key to Longevity. After 60. The title was so absurd to me at the time that I almost laughed. Movement before coffee? No, thank you. But something about it stuck with me. The article mentioned that just 15-30 minutes of gentle movement in the morning, whether it's stretching, walking, yoga, or even light chores, can do wonders for circulation, brain function, and joint health. It helps regulate blood sugar, boosts metabolism, and improves mood. That same week, I decided to give it a try. Not because I was convinced, but because I was desperate to feel better. I started simple. I put on my sneakers right after waking, up and went for a slow 10-minute walk around the block. The air was crisp, the streets were quiet, and my body, though hesitant, responded. By the time I got home, I already felt a little lighter, not just physically, but mentally too. That 10-minute walk turned into 15, then 20. I added in some gentle stretches afterward, nothing fancy, just a few toe touches, neck rolls, and shoulder circles. Before I knew it, I had created a little morning movement ritual, and let me tell you, it changed everything. The first thing I noticed was how much sharper my mind felt. That morning fog, gone. I could focus more easily, carry a conversation without grasping for words, and even remember. Little things like where I'd left my glasses the night before. Then came the physical benefits. My knees, which used to feel creaky until noon, began to loosen up earlier in the day. My posture improved. I stood taller. I walked with more confidence. Even climbing stairs didn't feel like a chore anymore. And let's talk about energy. I never realized how sluggish my mornings had become until I stopped feeling sluggish. Those first few minutes of movement acted like a natural switch, waking up my body without the need for caffeine or sugar. It was like I had tapped into a hidden reserve of vitality I didn't know was still in me. But perhaps the biggest shift was internal. By moving first thing in the morning, I started each day with a small win, a signal to myself that I was still in charge of my health, that I wasn't just letting life happen to me, that I could act instead of react. And that mindset carried over into everything else I did throughout the day. The science backs it up too. I later learned that morning movement boosts endorphins, those feel-good chemicals that elevate your mood. It also regulates cortisol, the stress hormone that tends to spike in the morning, especially in older adults. Moving gently helps calm that storm, keeping blood pressure stable and your mind at ease. And no, it doesn't have to be strenuous. This isn't about running marathons or doing CrossFit. It's about listening to your body and giving it what it needs. For me, some days it's a brisk walk, others it's yoga, and sometimes it's just putting on music and dancing in the living room. It all counts. Over time, I even found joy in the ritual itself. I'd get up, drink a glass of water, step outside, and greet the morning with a sense of purpose and presence. I stopped seeing movement as something I should do and started seeing it as something I wanted to do, something that anchored my day in strength and self-care. And here's the kicker. By prioritizing movement early in the day, I noticed that I slept better at night. My body felt more aligned, more relaxed, and ready to rest. That meant I woke up the next day feeling even better, ready to keep the momentum going. It became a beautiful cycle of well-being. Looking back, I regret not starting this sooner. I wish I could go back and tell my 60-year-old self, lace up your shoes, move before the day gets ahead of you. Your body will thank you immediately and for years to come. If you're reading this and thinking, it's too late for me, I want to assure you, it's not. Whether you're 60, 70, or beyond, your body wants to move. It just needs you to give it a chance. And the morning is the perfect time to start, because it sets the tone for everything that follows. So tomorrow, before you pour your coffee or check your phone, do one small thing. Stretch, walk, breathe, move. Not for weight loss or vanity or some external measure, but because you deserve to feel strong, clear, and alive, no matter your age. That's the lesson movement taught me, and I'll never go back. Mind over age. How mental habits keep you. Young, I never realized how loud my mind had become until I found myself sitting in total silence one morning, staring out the window. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was a storm of thoughts, worries, regrets, to-do lists that no longer mattered but still lingered, memories I couldn't change, fears about the future. That's when I understood something important. Even though my body was aging, my mind was running like it was still in the middle of a hectic career, and that, I believe, was aging me faster than anything else. See, there's a strange assumption we make as we grow older, that aging is only about wrinkles, gray hair, or aching joints. But your mental habits play an enormous role in how gracefully or how rapidly you age. I learned this not through a doctor, but through lived experience. For years, my mornings started with checking the news, emails, and all the things wrong in the world. I'd wake up already tense, already bracing myself for bad news or something going wrong. And guess what? My shoulders would tighten, my stomach would churn, my entire nervous system would brace itself for a fight that never came. That's stress? It became chronic. One morning, something inside me snapped. I turned off the TV. I put down the newspaper. I left my phone in the other room. I sat in my chair, placed my hand over my heart, and just breathed. It felt awkward at first, pointless, even. But within 5 minutes, something shifted. I could feel myself relax. The noise in my head quieted down. Not completely, but just enough for me to notice how tense I had been all those years. It was the first time I realized that the way we start our mornings mentally can either drain us or recharge us. That's when I began building what I now call my mind-first ritual. Instead of starting with screens or stressful thoughts, I now begin my day with intention. It might be meditation, just 5 minutes of stillness with my eyes closed and my focus on my breath. Or journaling, writing down 3 things I'm grateful for, or 1 goal for the day that gives me purpose. Sometimes it's just sitting quietly with a cup of tea and watching the birds outside my window. The key isn't what I do, it's How I do it, with presence, with gratitude, with calm. And let me tell you, the impact has been profound. I feel sharper, like my brain got a tune-up. I remember names more easily. I'm more patient in conversations. And I find joy in little things I used to overlook. But more than that, I feel lighter, mentally and emotionally. Like I'm no longer carrying a lifetime of stress on my shoulders the moment I wake up. Science backs this up too. Studies show that chronic stress accelerates biological aging by shortening telomeres, the little caps on our DNA that protect our cells. Mindfulness, meditation, and positive thinking, on the other hand, help preserve them. Simply put, peaceful minds age slower. Another thing I added to my mornings? Learning. Now, I'm not talking about studying for hours like we did in school. I mean, little bites of learning. Sometimes I'll read a few pages from a new book, listen to a podcast, or even watch a short video that teaches me something I didn't know. It stimulates the brain, yes, but more than that, it gives me a sense of growth, of relevance, of staying connected to the world in a meaningful way. After all, it's not the number of years in your life, but the life in your years that counts. I also began avoiding one big morning mistake: ruminating. It's easy, when you're alone and the house is quiet, to replay mistakes from 30 years ago, or worry about things completely out of your control. But I realize that kind of thinking is like putting weights on your heart before the day even begins. It drags you down. It steals your energy and joy. So now, when those thoughts creep in, I gently say to myself, that was then. This is now. I breathe. I return to the present. And I choose a thought that lifts me up instead of pulling me under. Some days, that's all it takes to feel 10 years younger. And here's something no one tells you. Aging doesn't make you wiser. Reflection does. Taking time in the morning to reflect, to check in with yourself, and to redirect your mindset is what keeps your spirit young. I'm more curious, more compassionate, and more resilient now than I ever was in my 40s. And it all started with mental habits I shaped after turning 60. So if I could give you one piece of advice, it would be this: guard your mornings. Treat your first waking hour like sacred ground. Don't let the noise of the world in before your soul is ready. Instead, use that time to reconnect with yourself, to breathe, to think, to grow. Your mind is your most powerful tool, and like any tool, it needs care, attention, and sharpening. Now, my mornings begin with intention, not interruption. And as strange as it may sound, I feel younger than I did a decade ago. Not because my skin is smoother, but because my mind is lighter. That's the final lesson I'll leave you with. Youth is not a look, it's a state of mind. And your mornings, that's where it begins.